Number 3. What if Piccolo had a son? I mean, why not? It's a fun concept, but we don't feel like it's applicable to the character for quite the foreseeable future.
Ah, but Masako, that's where you're wrong. Welcome back to the Butter Bunch. My name is Jacob Butter, and today I'm bringing back to you another Dragon Ball What If discussion. But first, I'd like to respond to a little video that Masako X actually made a few days ago, in which he goes through lightning rounds for what ifs which he thinks do not give enough content for a long-running series. And guess what's number 3?
Number 3. What if Piccolo had a son?
That's right. So, apparently Masako doesn't think that What If Piccolo Had a Son has the potential for a series. Meanwhile, here I am, having written 8 parts of it already. However, let's see, he has got his reasons.
While we do not deny our interest in tackling this topic one day in a bigger capacity, one must remember that Piccolo Jr. is still quite young for a Namekian even in Super. He's pretty much the same age chronologically as Gohan.
Yeah, I do actually address this in the video. He is 9 years old when he actually gives birth to the baby in this scenario. However, it was still done in times of emergency, just like what happened with King Piccolo and Goku.
Despite showing wisdom beyond his years. As much as we'd love to see our favourite Big Green have something more to do in the show other than punching things really hard or looking all stoic and majestic as well as spouting exposition,
that's pretty much the reason I made this scenario in the first place, but yes.
and seeing some more slug people around, it is safe to say that he is more than happy with his current surrogate family of Dende, Gohan, Videl, and Pan.
That is true. He is happy with his surrogate family, and that's if you're thinking about it in terms of, well, either back in the days of Z or in the days of Super nowadays. He is happy with his family, so I will agree with him there.
So that we will outlive them all, but for now, he's content with his lot. But you have to keep in mind how long Namekian lifespans are. We can expect that once his closest Saiyan and human friends are long gone, Piccolo will start to feel a little lonely, which may result in wanting to spawn offspring to either continue on his legacy or to have some company and distract him from the grueling...
Yes. So if this scenario were to actually happen sometime in the future, he goes on to talk about the Dragon Ball Online timeline, which I am actually not familiar with as of right now. That would happen. Piccolo would probably spawn a son, to keep himself company and just basically carry on living his life. Or maybe he'll stay on the lookout with Dende, because Dende's still got his Namekian lifespan to go along. That could happen too. If you look about it in terms of the future, then yes, that's exactly what would happen. However, most of Masako X's what-ifs, and the reason that those what-ifs drew me in the first place, is part of the idea of doing a butterfly effect. Taking elements that you know are going to happen in the story, or character motivations you know exist at a certain point in the story, and transforming them. So essentially, changing the past. So if this scenario were to be applied into a changing of the past, I think it would probably seem something like what it is that I've done. And there is another What If Piccolo Had a Child out there. I can't remember the user, but I'll put them on the screen right now. And they do have something kind of similar to this, except for, again, it's about Piccolo wanting to spawn an offspring for the sake of it, rather than in a state of emergency. That being said, let's get back into it. Let's see how long this can go on for with What If Piccolo Had a Son, Part 2. So we left off right after the Saiyan attack, so Goku, Gohan, and Krillin were all admitted to hospital. The newborn Namekian had already made a recovery and remained by Gohan's bedside the entire time. The three of them had grown quite attached to the little tyke, and decided to give him a name Piccolo would approve of. He is Gojang. Why Gojang? Well, all of King Piccolo's children, and of course the 2 Piccolos themselves, were named after musical instruments, and Gojang is a Chinese string instrument that looks like this, and sounds like this. So anyway, since Gojang wasn't confined to the wilderness, he was actually able to develop a playful nature, annoying the doctors and nurses a little, but not destroying anything. He also never tapped into his max speed anymore because there was no need to, and all he needed was water to sustain himself, so there was no conflict surrounding food, which pleased the Saiyans to no end. After a few days, it was time to decide how they would go about saving their friends. The Earth Dragon Balls were still around, but they were inactive after Goku's revival. And plus, they wouldn't have been able to bring back Chiaotzu since he died already. Luckily, just as before, the solution was brought to them by a visitor. Not Mr. Popo this time, but Kami himself. Kami liked the chance to get off the lookout for a bit, and he also wanted to lay eyes upon his pseudo-grandson. Gojang, of course, has no idea who Kami is. In fact, he's never looked at himself in the mirror, so he doesn't even notice the resemblance. Kami flies off with Bulma on Mr. Popo's carpet to retrieve his ship, because Bulma still blows Nappa's pod up by mistake. Kami tells Bulma his backstory, and how he waited on Yarnsabit Heights as the nameless Namekian for more years than he remembered, and discovered the ship one day, and returned, and the word that formed in his head to activate everything. Piccolo. Once everything is ready, Bulma, Krillin, and Gohan board the ship, but this time, unsurprisingly, with a new passenger.
Gohan!
Everyone had planned to leave Gojang with Kami, but it was clear almost at once that that wasn't going to work out. The newborn Namekian's instinct was clear. Where Gohan goes, he goes. Besides, they let a 5-year-old go on an alien planet before in both timelines. What difference will it seriously make? Well, it means that the Krillin and Gohan don't get as much image training as they otherwise would, because there's a literal bouncing baby on board. And they can't really include him in the training because his mind isn't developed enough to have discipline. Gojang is still trying to play games with the fighters, just like in the hospital, but the pair aren't as obliging since they want to prepare for the dangers ahead. Sure, they don't know about the Freezer Force, but they're still going to an alien planet with no idea what they might find. They need to be ready. Though Gohan does see some progress with Gojang through his studies. He's able to teach Gojang the alphabet and basic diction, with a little help from Krillin and even Bulma. Gohan also talked him through what he was learning and made the academic side of the trip much more fun. We then get to the Fake Namek Arc, and, unlike Masako, I don't have any particular big hatred for this filler arc, so let's explore it. The space fleet attack the crew to no avail, and the ship enters the mirror field. Having nothing better to do, everyone descends and explores the station they ended up in. Just like before, Krillin activates the trap pistols and the crew are under attack once more. As expected, Gojang's Protect Gohan mode activates once more. But he doesn't jump in front of the blast per se. This time the solution is a lot more interesting. He spreads his wings to max span, not very far, but still, and focuses his ki on them. And yes, he has an instinct where he can focus certain ki. Again, only to protect Gohan at this point. His wings glow a bright yellow, and he soars through the pistols, slicing each one to render them useless. And before anyone says I'm making my OC too powerful, I must remind you this is only an instinctive protect mode for now. He can barely tap into any sort of power unless Gohan is in some sort of danger. And yes, Gohan can't be harmed by bullets, but Gojang doesn't know that. At any rate, the newborn Namekian was absolutely useless when it came to any other traps. So the old Dragon Ball staple of Bulma getting kidnapped remains as per the status quo. The child occupants of the ship emerge and surround the team, and that whole mini-arc with the meteor shower plays as in the original. And so, there they were, crash landing and waking up on Fake Namek. Righty and Zakro waste no time getting them into stasis and reading their minds. Bulma is the first up and wakes Krillin and Gohan, but not Gojang. Even though this is the first taste of the planet that he's from, so they think for now, they leave the baby to sleep. It was nice to get some peace from him sometimes, just like with any newborn, Namekian or otherwise. He does wake up eventually, halfway through the collection of the Dragon Balls, and helps out with the search underwater. You might think that with the super speed he'd be able to catch up to the dinosaur-looking creature that swallows the third Dragon Ball, but he doesn't really understand what's going on, he just trails behind the others. Remember, he can only tap into his speed when Gohan is in trouble. Speaking of which, they all decide that it's best if Krillin goes into the poisonous swamp this time instead of Gohan, just to avoid any unnecessary triggers. The same goes for the Tornado, which is taken out by a Destructo Disc rather than a Masenko. The Stone Giant was a little different too. Here, Gojang activates his Winged Slice technique for the second time, providing a better distraction for the toy plane rescue as well as landing some extra damage on the giant's shoulder. The quest is almost complete, and it is time for Righty and Zakro to activate the final trap. Gohan is lifted into the air by the invisible tentacle monsters, and Bulma is captured again by the fake Namekians themselves. In the original, Krillin has no idea who to go after and save, but a little green birdie told him the answer. But a little green birdie gave him the answer this time. At once, Krillin pounces towards Righty, Zakro, and Bulma, while Gojang powers enough momentum to free Gohan from the grasp of the monsters. Granted, this does wind Gohan in the stomach because Gojang came at him with full force, but we do know that the lad grows up to deliver the perfect punch in a very similar way, so he'll be alright. Krillin, meanwhile, wails on Righty and Zakro, forcing them to tell them all about the plan and the hole in the atmosphere. No need for a third Bulma capture this time, and so the four take off once more, heading for the real Namek. Meanwhile, Vegeta is telling the Frieza Force and is heading in that direction himself. Will Gojang provide a major difference on his ancestral planet? Find out next time on What If Piccolo Had a Son. Sorry if you weren't expecting this part to be about Fake Namek, of all things, one of the most hated additions to Dragon Ball Z that people usually ignore, but those complaints come from it not furthering the plot, at least as far as I understand. In this part, the crew actually learned how Gojang functions on an instinctive level, what makes him tick, and how to use and tap into his power. They now know this guy better than he knows himself, and this will make more of a difference on Real Namek next time. But before any of that, let me know your thoughts by means of liking or disliking, and leaving your thoughts in the comments of where the discussion could go. I'll see you all soon enough for another Butter Bunch video. Toodle pip.